Welcome back. I'm excited to bring to you the first episode of the Method Behind the Madness series for Iron Horse, where I'll be covering not only how we one-shot Fieser, but how we actually stumbled upon it as well, as I'm sure some wonder how on earth do we come up with some of this stuff. With that said, if you are new around here, welcome, and in this series I cover the strategies we have come up with and use in our speedruns for each raid. Alright, enough talk, let's get into it.
Lock, and then you foam him there, and then you rav stack 3 times off the train, and maybe I don't know. Oh my god! Imagine if you can crit on melee attacks, man.
I think it. I got good news. I think it actually works.
What?
Oi!
I think it actually. Hold on. Just look at this and tell me I'm not crazy real fast. Just tell me I'm not crazy. Hold on. So.
Best thing I could possibly.
So
think.
it doesn't. Okay. So it doesn't show you the damage numbers or the transfer, but I think the guy just died. Like I'm looking. Like that's why I wasn't sure, and I recorded it to look back. But I'll just let you watch it and you tell me, and then I'll slow it down and point out why I think it actually just worked. Like I'll slow down and point out the enemy that died because I'm pretty sure it actually does work, to be honest. So watch what I tag. So there's the guy with the red satchel on his hip, right? Okay. I tagged his purple bar, and then he climbs on top of this truck up here, okay? So you don't see it happen. He's running to the truck right now. Okay. Now, you see a 13.6 million, okay? But no numbers in the feed to show it transferred. And no numbers in the feed to show the other guy died. But if you look, his body's right here about to fall over that wasn't there initially. And it's falling right there, falls off.
There's no fucking way!
Do you see it fall off?
Welcome to my world, motherfucker!
It's still crazy how much time we could save right there. That small section.
In?
Go up.
Okay.
Four.
Double hooks.
Up.
Lieutenant Gray failed me.
Nice.
I recommend you do not.
They don't stand a chance against me, Colonel.
You should get to the control room. Watch out for the forge. It gets hotter than hell in there.
Where's
I
my
hit
damage?
him.
Where's my damage?
Pulsed.
More.
You're good. You're
I
good.
shot.
Oh, no.
Dead?
Oh,
Dead.
separate?
I mean, I shot as in I shot him to crit him. You said I'm good.
Alright, so now that you know what you're getting yourself into, let's take a look at the general team composition and player positioning. Before I get into what we do, it is important to remember that you do not need to have the player positioning this way. We do it this way as it complements the strategies we use in Railyard and Heat Chamber. I say this because, as you know, we do send someone ahead to pull us into Boss 2 in our speedruns, and this, mainly, dictates our layout. It is also too important to know that load times will change a player's positioning if you do choose this layout, and some players may have to go somewhere else, in which I'll also cover for these certain players. With that out of the way, let's start with our skill tier Overwatch player. This player is the same player that is pulling the group into Boss 2 as well as starting the encounter. For this reason, this player starts the encounter from A side and calls the first code as well as checks the front A box. The Nego, True Patriot, and FI players are all also responsible for the A side of the map, so depending on the load times, any of these 3 players could be going up to read the code to get the encounter going, or if any of these players calls that they have loaded in before another, they'll call and go upstairs, which the other 2 will then be responsible for the back A box. The Focus player takes the same approach as the skill tier Overwatch player and takes an assigned position at the B codes. This is done so the player can begin charging up Focus as soon as the boss spawns in and has a perfect line of sight onto the boss from this position. The Regulus, Red mid buff, and skill tier Achilles players are then put into the same situation as the A side players, as depending on their loads will dictate which code on C side they will pursue, with the first load going for front C, and then the other 2 remaining players left to either go back C or help B. Now, before we begin, it is important I point out the newfound changes we have come up with negotiators. Back in my original Boomer breakdown, I said this: you only transfer the amount of damage dealt to each enemy's true health value. Meaning, if an ad has 5 million health, and you hit that ad for 10 million, only 5 million damage is actually applied to Boomer. You cannot hit a massive crit and chunk Boomer due to this design. Now, this does still hold true with the addition that weak points and armor pieces do not act the same. We have found that these entities that show no health pool can actually transfer the true damage dealt to them. This finding is what this whole strategy revolves around and allows us to even pull this off. To begin, let's take a look at what the Nego player should be running. As you can see here, this player should actually run a low-level weapon in order to tag the rocket ad with a few crits to push Fieser past the 4-bar mark, allowing for full damage to transfer. I'll point this out in action in a moment. The second weapon here is unused, however I just have another SMG to tag Fieser with when he spawns. In the sidearm slot we have the Regulus, as it has the highest base damage of any pistol in the game. In terms of gear, you can see I'm running 4-piece Nego with all the stats rolled to headshot damage. This is due to the interaction between the Achilles Pulse and the Dodge City holster. For the chest, the sacrifice should be ran with headshot damage and crit damage rolls, as you'll be getting all your crit chance from team buffs. Perfect Glass Cannon also allows for the most optimal DPS with minimal setup, as you do not need any extra damage on top of what will be shown in the buff builds, with the last piece being the Dodge City holster for the headshot damage onto the Achilles mark. In terms of skills, you can run whatever you prefer here, but I would recommend a skill to wipe such as the Fire Chem or Sticky, and then an additional Achilles Pulse to pulse the boss with to potentially aid the DPS players in the event the head may not get pulsed from the overcharged Achilles. The specialization this player runs does not really matter. However, I run Sharpshooter as I need the spec ammo later on in the speedrun. Now, in terms of what this role does when you spawn into Boss 2 is completely dictated by your load time. If you do get a fast load and are the first in out of the FI player or True Patriot player, then you'll be heading upstairs to read off the code. If you get a late spawn, then you'll be going to back A to call or shoot the corresponding code box. After the boss is spawned, you then need to tag him with Nego and potentially Achilles Pulse if you decide to run that skill as well. Once the boss is tagged, you then turn your attention to the rocket ad and wait for the full damage of Fieser to come through. Once the damage comes through and Fieser is at 4 bars, you then need to shoot the rocket ad until you crit on him with your low-level weapon. This is done because if the boss does not get damaged even a single point past 4 bars, then he will not take full damage. So if you were to shoot with your Regulus and crit on the weak point without doing this extra damage past 4 bars, you would not kill him. The low-level weapon is also important here, so you do not kill the rocket ad, as the True Patriot player will also be shooting him with a low-level Scorpio to apply multiple buffs. Once the rocket ad is prepped, you are then free to shoot the weak point with your Regulus, and you pray to see that crit. The True Patriot player should be running the build shown here, making use of a level 30 Scorpio, yes, level 30, in order to not kill the rocket ad when prepping it. I'll show you how you can get this in 8 minutes after I cover what the role's jobs are. The other primary weapon goes unused here, as well as the sidearm. As you can see, this player should be running 4-piece True Patriot rolled to skill tier in order to maximize the foam duration. This player does run the chest in order to speed up the cycle of the buffs and make sure to make use of the red buff on the rocket ad. This player should run the Coyote's Mask and is tasked with getting the close buff for the extra crit damage for the team, and in terms of backpacks should make use of Opportunistic to help with boss damage as well as the damage on the rocket ad. As from what we have found, adding buffs onto the rocket ad does in fact increase transfer damage. In terms of skills, this player should run foam to keep the rocket ad still as possible for the Nego player and a wipe skill. This player also utilizes demo spec for the additional damage to targets out of cover for the rest of the team. Now, what this role does when you spawn into Boss 2 is also dictated by your load time. If you do get a fast load and are the first in out of the FI player or Nego player, you'll be heading upstairs to read off the code, as seen here. If you get a late spawn, then you'll be going back to A to call or shoot the corresponding code. After the boss is spawned, you then need to tag the boss with Opportunistic and then divert your attention to the rocket ad immediately. Once the rocket ad is spawned, you need to foam the ad in place and begin stacking Scorpio and True Patriot. Once these stacks are applied, you have done all you can do and just wait and hope to see that crit. Now, you may be thinking, how on earth can I get a level 30 Scorpio? And the answer is surprisingly simple. Please do not do what we did and take 3 guys and power level a level 1 all the way through DC. Please. The 3 hours is not worth it. Instead, make a new character and select main campaign, not Warlords of New York, and once you create your character, just go ahead and play through the start until you get into the White House. Once you are there, you need to boost your character to level 30. which all owners of Warlords of New York should have. You do need to do a few things, however, before you can do this. As you see here, the game will not let you until you unlock the boo and a skill. To do that, you just need to go upstairs and watch Manny's first cutscene, then run back down and grab a skill. Once that is done, you can go back into the store and redeem your boost to 30. Once you are boosted, you need to then equip all of your level 1 gear again, so you can sell all of the gear the boost starts you off with. This is important as you need the money in order to craft Scorpio. Once you sell, you can then run over to the crafting station and purchase both account shared blueprints and shared materials. Also, make sure you grab your Scorpio that you'll be turning into a level 30 from your stash. Once you do all of that, you can go into the crafting menu and reconfigure your level 40 Scorpio into a level 31. As long as you have the materials, which you should, since you purchased the shared materials. So go ahead and throw that bad boy back into the stash to take back out on your main, and just like that, in 8 minutes, you have a level 30 Scorpio. Now please, do not waste 3 hours, or even possibly more, boosting someone from level 1 like we did. Please. Moving on, we have the skill tier Overwatch player. This player should be running any combination of yellow items with Acostas and Overwatch. The roles and weapons used here have no impact on this strategy, as this player's sole role is to provide an overcharged Achilles pulse as well as Overwatch. The skills used should be Achilles and a wipe skill. This player should also be using Demo Spec as well for the additional damage to targets out of cover for his subgroup. Now, this player's role has him pulling the team into the second encounter and then running straight to a airlock to receive the first code. Once the code has been called, he then takes position to call for an A code, while also taking cover to proc Overwatch. Once the rocket ad spawns, he throws his nade for overcharge and pulses the rocket ad, promptly wiping after the shot comes through, as if he was to wipe too soon, Overwatch would not count for the team. Onto the FI player. This player should be running the build shown here, making use of 4-piece FI including the chest piece, as well as Acosta's backpack for the overcharge. Similar to the Overwatch player, the weapons and roles of items has zero impact here, as the player is also only providing buffs. The skills used should be normal pulse and a wipe skill. This player should also be using Survivalist to provide the extra damage to the rocket ad that is status affected by foam. What this role does when you spawn into boss 2 is also dictated by your load time. If you get a fast load and are the first in, out of the True Patriot player or a Nego player, then you'll be heading upstairs to read off the code. If you get a late spawn, then you'll be also going to back A to call or shoot the corresponding code. Once the boss has been spawned, you then wait to see Fieser take some damage and promptly overcharge a normal pulse to provide the additional damage onto the rocket ad. Now, for the skill tier Achilles player, they should be running a similar build to this one, as the main priority is to provide an overcharged Achilles to the boss and provide some sort of extra damage to him. So, as you can see, Red has opted to run 5 yellow cores paired with the card pistol in order to hit that 6 skill tier limit. Feel free to run anything close to this, but the important thing is that you do hit 6 skill tiers. The skills ran should be Achilles and a wipe skill. This role covers seaside codes depending on his load. However, realistically, you could cover both C codes while moving to the front. Once the boss is spawned, you then throw your nade for overcharge and pulse the boss with Achilles, promptly shooting the boss in the body for any extra damage you can get in, as you do not want to burn the Achilles mark on the head, as the focus player will be taking this mark. Now, the mid-buff player should be running the build shown here, which is essentially the standard rifle build with coyotes, running a Walker Harris bag with Vigilance, Perfect Glass Cannon, Contractors, Foxes, and a Providence holster, paired with a classic NCQB M1A with Boomerang for damage. Now, ideally you'd run all crit damage here for the rolls, as you are saving the head pulse for the focus player. However, if both the focus player and Regulus player land their shots, this player would not even need to shoot the boss. The skills used would be an extra Achilles and a fire sticky, as the player is also responsible for exploding the boss, which I'll go into further detail in a moment. This player's role is rather flexible, as depending on the spawn, this player can either cover B or C codes. Once the boss is spawned, you will then need to take up a position to proc mid Coyote's buff. Once you have procced the buff, you need to essentially chase the boss down until he has been killed, promptly wiping yourself as well as the boss with your fire sticky, as the boss needs to be blown up in order to cancel his death animation and allow for everyone to wipe much sooner. If you do not explode him and you all wipe, you will actually fail the encounter as his death animation counts him as still being alive. So this small detail of blowing up the boss and yourself together should not go overlooked. The Regulus player should be running the build shown here, running again a classic and CQB M1A with Boomerang and a Regulus. In terms of the build, it is just the standard pistol headshot build, making use of the Punch Drunk, either a Providence or Walker Harris bag with Vigi, Perfect Glass Cannon, Contractors, Foxes, and Dodge City, all rolled to headshot damage to get the most out of the Achilles mark damage. The skills used should be an Achilles and a wipe skill, and the spec should be Sharpshooter to provide the extra damage for the team. This roll should either be covering B or C depending on his spawn and load times, and then promptly be approaching the boss to prepare to land his regular shot on a mark. In terms of which mark he is getting is up to you and your team, however we have him taking either leg, and all other players shooting him in the body to avoid either the legs or head marks. This should be saved for other players. Now, the final role of the focus player should be running the build shown here, running the Nemesis as its primary weapon. The gear should be a Coyote's Mask for long buff, a Raldi bag with Vigilance, the Pristine Example, and 3 pieces Aces and 8s for the bonus headshot damage, with all rolls to headshot damage. The skills used should be an extra Achilles, as you can pulse without dropping focus stacks, and a wipe skill, with the Sharpshooter spec being used for the bonus headshot damage. Now, this player is much more restricted, where he always has to stay at B for codes, and then go straight into building focus stacks. Once the boss is spawned, this player can pulse and then wait to land the headshot on the Achilles mark with full focus stacks, as well as applying the Long Coyotes buff. The fact that this player needs to apply Long Coyotes buff is the reason he needs to stay at B all the way back against the wall. Once this player does his damage, it is important to wait to wipe, as if he wipes, then you lose any buff he is providing, such as Long Coyotes. This rule of waiting to wipe until the shot is taken is universal for every single roll and should not be overlooked, as you may be losing certain buffs due to this if someone decides to wipe early. With that said, you should now have all the information you need to successfully one-shot Fieser. I hope you have all enjoyed this video and the slight change in style to this video compared to the Method Behind the Madness videos I have made in the past. And if in fact you did enjoy this content, please consider leaving a like and subscribing, as these kinds of videos do take some time to make, and doing so will get this video shared with many more and does mean a lot to me. As always, let me know how I did in the comments and what you'd like to see in the future.
No, it's not fair! It's not fair! Oh!